women's access to reproductive care is more important than ever. These freedoms are under attack after the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade and strip women and girls of their constitutional rights. They're also under attack from elected officials in states across this country, including here in North Carolina. I have a message for the women of North Carolina. No matter what the Supreme Court said in the Dobbs case, you have a legal right to abortion care in this state. Our state law protects women's reproductive freedoms until at least 20 weeks, and in cases after that when a woman's life is in serious danger. I will do everything in my power to protect those reproductive freedoms in North Carolina. We don't have to imagine what would happen if our state created restrictions on this type of care. We've already seen it happening across this nation. A 10-year-old girl in Ohio was raped and impregnated. She was denied abortion care in her home state because she was 3 days past 6 weeks. Their prohibition is at 6 weeks. A woman in Texas who had a miscarriage was forced to continue to carry her dead fetus because of that state's anti-abortion laws. Women in Missouri and Wisconsin are denied needed medication for miscarriages and medical issues because their doctors simply did not know whether they could provide the type of medical care that those patients needed. Politicians are playing with women's lives. Decisions about reproductive care are deeply personal. They should be made by a woman in consultation with her loved ones and her doctor. They should not be made by politicians. Republican legislative leaders have said that the only reason they are not passing a law right now to restrict women's reproductive rights are because they know that Governor Cooper would veto that law and that Democratic leaders in the state House and state Senate, like Representative Gill, would uphold that veto. So I have another message to the people of North Carolina. If we value women and girls having the right to make their own health care decisions, then we have to elect representatives and senators to our state legislature who will defend those rights. We know that the right to abortion care in North Carolina is on the ballot this November and every election to come thereafter. As Attorney General, I will do everything in my power to protect women's right to reproductive care because it's the right thing to do and because it's necessary to create the kind of North Carolina we all want, where people want to live, support their families, ensure their kids get a good education, where businesses want to invest and grow because their employees will be happy, and where economies can thrive. I'm grateful to Representative Gill and Representative Ross for North Carolina's women, for fighting for North Carolina's women in the General Assembly and the U.S. Congress. And I'm grateful to Dr. Pettigrew for the work she does every day to make sure that women in North Carolina receive quality health care that keeps them healthy and well. I promise to stay in this fight alongside each of you. Now we will hear from Congresswoman Ross.
Well, thank you, Attorney General Stein, for that introduction, and thank you for all that you do every single day to protect reproductive freedom in our state. Your leadership and voice for women makes a huge impact. I also want to thank State Representative Rosa Gill, who I served with in the North Carolina House, for holding the line with her colleagues in the General Assembly, as well as Dr. Erica Pettigrew, who's ensuring that women in our area can access the vital health care services that they need. We're gathered here today at a frightening moment in our decades-long battle for reproductive freedom in North Carolina. As we speak, Republican leaders in the General Assembly are scheming to turn the clock back 50 years. They have made it abundantly clear that if given the chance, they'll enact restrictive abortion bans just like the draconian laws we are seeing in states all around the country. But all of us here have one message for them. We will not go back. North Carolina currently stands as a safe haven in the South, but we need to fight to keep it that way. In Georgia, an egregious 6-week abortion ban just went into effect, despite the fact that after 6 weeks, most women don't even know that they're pregnant. In South Carolina, a judge also ruled that the state can continue enforcing its 6-week abortion ban as the law heads to the South Carolina Supreme Court. In addition, at the end of this month, a trigger ban making abortion illegal at fertilization will go into effect in Tennessee. Women across the country are scared. They fear for their health and they fear for their safety. They fear for their futures and they fear for their daughters' futures. In the face of these despicable attacks on our health care, Democrats in Congress are doing all we can to protect reproductive freedom. And President Biden right now is having a press conference on his most recent executive order on reproductive freedom. Throughout July, I worked to pass critical pieces of legislation that would protect women's health care in North Carolina, as well as the rights of women traveling to North Carolina to access vital health services. For the second time, the House passed the Women's Health Protection Act, which would codify the protections of Roe v. Wade into federal law. We passed legislation ensuring that no state can prevent, restrict, impede, or retaliate against a person traveling across state lines to obtain a lawful abortion. We also passed legislation that would ensure all women can access contraception, and that legislation was sponsored by North Carolina's own Kathy Manning. The Dobbs decision was shocking, but perhaps more sinister than this decision were the opinions that accompanied it. Justice Clarence Thomas's concurring opinion laid the groundwork for even greater government interference in the personal and family decisions of our people, including the right to use contraception. More than 20 years ago, I worked with legislators on both sides of the aisle in the General Assembly to expand access to contraception. It's extremely disappointing to see where we are today. While Senate Republicans continue to block important reproductive legislation, my colleagues and I remain more determined than ever to protect abortion access and reproductive freedom. It will take all of us here at the federal, state, and local level to combat these attacks on our health care and our rights. But we're ready for the fight. Thank you again, Attorney General Stein, for leading this fight in North Carolina. Thank you to our courageous health care providers like Dr. Pettigrew, who are working day in and day out to care for their patients despite these obstacles. And I'm now going to turn it over to my dear friend, Representative Rosa Gill, who has worked for women and girls in North Carolina for decades as an educator, community leader, and an essential state legislator. Representative Gill.
Thank you, Congresswoman Ross, for those kind remarks and for all the hard work you do in Congress to help protect women, help improve the lives of so many of us. We in North Carolina are very proud of you. And thanks to you, Attorney General Josh Stein, for all you do to protect women in North Carolina. We are very grateful to have you as our Attorney General. You know, 50 years ago, we were granted the constitutional right to make decisions for ourselves. I mean women. A few weeks ago, the U.S. Supreme Court took away the constitutional right of a woman to make reproductive decisions and handed that over to our state legislator. While many of us are disappointed and a little scared and a little heartbroken, and even view this as a temporary setback for gender equity, we are more determined than ever to continue the fight for women and equality for all. It is well documented that the conservative abortion opponents in North Carolina will never give up on banning abortion. They've passed and will continue to pass legislation that will restrict access to basic reproductive health care services. And as a legislator, and all pro-choice legislators or reproductive rights legislators, we will continue to fight that legislation. Many of them do not realize that abortion is health care, and reproductive right is fundamental to ensuring women are equal and are full participants in our society. Denying some people access to a full range of health care services, which include abortion, jeopardize their economic well-being and the ability to determine their future. We all know that abortion in North Carolina is still legal. However, it is only going to take legislative action to ban it. The members of the General Assembly is currently the last line of defense against anti-abortion forces who are determined to dismantle access to reproductive health care services, which includes abortion. It is our responsibility, the pro-choice legislators and pro-choice advocates, to ensure that the legislative candidates that we choose to serve in our General Assembly in November will protect the right of legal abortions in North Carolina. Our anti-abortion force in the North Carolina General Assembly have shown us time and time again it is their intent to dismantle access to abortion and reproductive health services. All you need to do is just take a look at the bad legislation that they had tried to pass, and we stopped them with our governor's veto. They're making it known that they are planning to elect more anti-abortion legislators in both the House and the Senate in order to override the governor's veto. Our current majority in the NCGA have already shown us that they are willing to do whatever it takes to retake the ability to override the governor's veto. They are preparing legislation to restrict reproductive services as we speak. Pro-choice advocates in the legislature will continue to fight to protect reproductive freedom, codify Roe versus Wade, and sustain the governor's veto. But we need your help. We need to elect pro-choice candidates who understand that abortion is health care. Reproductive right is fundamental, and that any related decision should be made between the woman, her family, and her doctor. We must take this opportunity to ensure that abortion remains legal in North Carolina. Our last defense of reproductive freedom may be at the ballot box this November. We're counting on you to help us keep abortion safe in North Carolina. Thank you in advance for allowing me to participate in this press conference. Now I will hand the mic over to Dr. Pettigrew, who is a health provider, to share her concerns about the impact of restrictions to health care services.
Thank you, Representative Gill, and thank you, Congresswoman Ross and Attorney General Stein. So my name is Dr. Erica Pettigrew. I'm a family medicine physician, which means that I care for people of all ages. I am the doctor who adjusts your diabetes medication, who does your pap smear, who cares for you as you age, who provides your prenatal care. I'm the one that cajoles you to get your COVID vaccines. I am not currently providing abortion care due to restrictions and regulations, but I am trained to do so, as many family doctors are. I'm not here on behalf of any organization. I'm here as a primary care physician who is very concerned about my patients. The recent Dobbs decision overturning Roe and the subsequent abortion restrictions in many states are having a chilling effect in several ways, including patient care and workforce shortage. What we are seeing now in states with these forced birth laws is horrific. It is bad for everyone's health, not just pregnant people, when state legislatures dictate medical care. When state legislatures dictate medical care, the physician shortages get worse and health declines because the best and the brightest won't work where they can't practice the highest quality evidence-based medicine. I had a patient last week who was seeing me to confirm pregnancy. I started this visit, as I do every time, asking her how she feels about being pregnant. She said she wasn't sure, and it was clear she didn't know if she would get in trouble if she disclosed her desire for an abortion. I was so grateful to be able to say, I know the current news has been confusing and scary, but thankfully abortion is still legal in North Carolina right now, and you can make whatever decision is right for you. Unfortunately, many patients are now scared not only to talk about their current needs, but we're also seeing patients who are reluctant to tell us about their pregnancy histories. For instance, it's common for us to, when taking a history for all patients, to ask them how many prior pregnancies and what were the outcomes. But now I'm seeing patients in my practice who are scared to disclose. What happens if they admit to a past abortion? They're clamming up and giving vague answers. And relatedly, medical providers, myself included, are now worried about what we write in our patients' confidential medical records. What if it's used against them or against us? This is what I mean when I talk about the chilling effect of these restrictions, even if they haven't been enacted in North Carolina. Those are some of the negative consequences we've been seeing here in North Carolina over the last 6 weeks, but it is hard to put into words how devastating it has been for my colleagues and their patients in our neighboring states of South Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia. Patients have appointments on the books, but because of politicians, they had to be called one by one and told they cannot get the care that they need, the care they could have had a week prior. Sobbing, despair, threats of suicide, those were often the reactions my colleagues heard when they had to make these devastating calls. The moral injury to all involved cannot be underestimated. The chilling effect extends way beyond abortion care. There is dangerous confusion right now in several of our neighboring states over pregnancy-related, life-threatening conditions. Situations like ectopic pregnancy, where the pregnancy is located outside the uterus, which is life-threatening and never results in a baby. Urgent medical or surgical treatment is always needed and fast. Same is true when a pregnant patient's water breaks way too early, something called pre-viable PPROM. We are hearing across these forced birth states that some doctors are being told to wait until patients are gravely ill before acting and delivering medical care. Wait until she has a fever and is showing signs of sepsis, or her blood counts are dropping because she's hemorrhaging before trying to save her life from pre-viable pre-prom or ectopic pregnancy. This is unconscionable. How is that pro-life? This is what happens when politicians try to practice medicine. And to the chilling effect on the workforce shortage, we are hearing from medical students and residents in OBGYN and family medicine that they are avoiding applying for jobs in states like South Carolina and Tennessee because of these laws. Even if a doctor is not involved in reproductive health care, in some way, these laws signal that a state legislature actively interferes with the doctor-patient relationship. No doctor or patient wants that. Let us do our jobs and let patients access care. The North Carolina State Legislature does not need to exacerbate our doctor shortage by scaring providers away. North Carolina is dangerously close to being one of the forced birth states, and we cannot let that happen. For the health and well-being of all North Carolinians, we need politicians on both sides of the aisle to stand against extremist abortion restrictions and ensure people can access the care they need. We are depending on you. This is not a game. These are our bodies, our families, and our futures. Thank you.
Excellent comments. Thank you very much, Doctor. If anyone has any questions for any of the speakers, feel free.
Yeah, a question for you, Attorney Stein.
Yes.
So Judge Osteen asked all parties in the 20-week abortion injunction case to submit briefs by end of this week, beginning of next week. What can we expect to see from your brief, and how do you respond to Republican legislative leaders' accusations that you've been going against your views by not speaking to reinstate or any yourself?
First of all, we've been doing our jobs from the first day. When this lawsuit was filed, my office and I defended the statute as it is written. Once the district court ruled that it was unconstitutional under Roe versus Wade and Casey, at that point, the office appealed the decision. I, however, recused myself because it's not proper for a lawyer that's defending a law to speak out against it. And at that point, the courts had determined it was unconstitutional. This issue matters to millions of North Carolinians, and I represent them as their Attorney General. So I recuse myself from the post-summary judgment phase and have continued to do so, and my office will be filing comments on Monday.
And Mike Navarro with Cardinal on Time. In previous press conferences, we said that North Carolina has seen an influx of out-of-state patients seeking abortion care. Is that also true that you have seen an influx of patients with ectopic pregnancies or who are afraid or can't get, even have miscarriages in other states and are afraid of getting the procedures? Are we also seeing an influx of those patients?
Would you like to answer that?
The simple answer is yes. We are seeing an influx of patients. Oftentimes, they know they're pregnant, but they don't even know that they have some of these life-threatening conditions. So their care is delayed because they have to scramble and figure out where they can go, and then hopefully we're able to get them the care that they need quickly.
You've talked about doing everything in your power to defend women's right to abortion in North Carolina, but what can you actually do as an executive branch official?
Well, one is speak and reassure the women of their rights. There is so much public confusion today about what a woman who is pregnant and for whatever reason determines that she doesn't want to carry that pregnancy through. A lot of people don't know what they can do. And under our state law, it is crystal clear that their right to make that choice for themselves remains. I also want folks to know that to the extent they value that right, they have to be vigilant in the election this November and every election that comes after, because that right is on the ballot. If the Republicans gain a supermajority in the legislature, they have made it crystal clear that they will restrict women, strip them of those rights, and voters and the people of North Carolina need to know that as well.
Yeah, and I would like to add
Please.
something, Laura. I had a telephone town hall last week. 3,400 people joined it. It was on guns, abortion, and inflation. You know, had to have some spicy topics. And we had a healthcare provider who said, because North Carolina has become this safe haven, we also have people who are helping women who come from other states and may not have a place to stay, may not have a ride, may not have the money that they need even to buy lunch or have dinner. And so, you know, really support systems are being set up in this state. And thanks to Governor Cooper's executive order on the right to travel and protect people, thanks now to President Biden's order. People who help other people don't have to feel like they're targets themselves. And so I just wanted to put that out there.
Yes.
Attorney General Stein, if I could follow up just to make sure. So will your office file a brief supporting lifting the injunction?
The office will be filing its comments on Monday. That will be done by the professional staff of the office.
Okay, what will they say?
They are consulting with their clients, and I'm sure finalizing their draft. We'll see what they say on Monday.
So they're consulting with the legislature?
No, their clients are District Attorney Woodall, DHHS, all the named defendants. The legislature, just to be clear, their voice has been heard. They filed an amicus brief. So there's no question but that their perspective will be considered by the court. But they were not defendants in this case, and so in this matter, other matters they are our clients, but in this matter they're not our clients.
I had a question for Congresswoman Ross. With the various bills you talked about House passing, we don't know what the scientific is, obviously. If any of them were to pass, do you not have any concern that the same Supreme Court that overturned Roe v. Wade would just overturn those laws in order to pass in Congress?
Well, I'm not concerned that the Supreme Court would overturn legislative action to establish contraceptive care, reproductive health care, abortion care, because we have the right to do that and protect people. So their issue was whether or not a provision of the Constitution would grant that separate and apart from legislative action. I am very heartened to see that there's a bipartisan group of senators who are working on abortion rights and contraceptive rights. And what we have seen is when a bipartisan group of senators gets together to work on things, frequently we can get something done. And I'm thrilled to see that one of those senators is Senator Kane from Virginia.
Yes.
A question for Dr. Pettigrew. So you've all spoken about how North Carolina has kind of become the safe haven in the South for people from other states seeking abortion where their rights have been taken away. So that being said, has it become more difficult for North Carolina residents to get abortion appointments in their own state?
So it's a good question. The short answer is yes. We are seeing a little bit longer wait times for people to get appointments. Another phenomenon that we're seeing is that desperate people are calling every clinic and getting on schedules as they can, which is completely understandable, but makes it challenging. And so clinics are working together to figure out how they can serve everybody that needs care.
Yes, Laura.
I wanted to get your thoughts about the Kansas vote last night, the abortion referendum.
Actually, do you want to talk about that?
That's
Well,
my.
can you elucidate on it?
Yeah. Here,
What do you
Deborah.
think? Is this something that you think is going to, is this an indicator of what might happen this November in North Carolina?
I think that I'm thrilled about the Kansas vote, and for those of you who don't know, Kansas, a red state, tried to put restrictions on abortion in their constitution, and that was defeated by more than 20 points. And I think what it shows is public sentiment, the evolution of public sentiment. I felt the same way when the U.S. House voted to repeal the Defense of Marriage Act. And people thought it was going to be a partisan vote, and we got 47 Republican legislators to vote to repeal an unconstitutional law. Politicians need to listen to their constituents and not put politics over people. And the fact that Kansas was the canary in the coal mine for this, and we got that kind of result, I think sends a very, very strong message to the rest of the country. And in a purple state like North Carolina, I would think it would be even greater than 20%.
No, that's it. Thank you. Yes.
And 'cause I know that in North Carolina there aren't a lot of facilities that provide abortions, and they're mostly in cities, and the people in rural counties have to travel a long way. Is there anything that the state can do or is thinking about doing to expand the number of facilities in North Carolina and to make it easier, even though it's legal, in a place for the people who live there to get care there?
Do do you want to speak to what the spread is of the facilities in North Carolina?
Happy to.
Yep, thank you.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because even though North Carolina is a state where abortion is legal, it does not mean that it has been easy for North Carolinians to access their rights and their health care. And so we have seen the phenomenon where the clinics tend to be in cities, or the providers. They're not always in clinics. Sometimes they're embedded in hospitals and in offices, but they are disproportionately in urban areas, and our North Carolinians in rural parts of the state still need to travel for many hours and take days off of work, arrange childcare. It's a hardship. So whatever we can do to expand access, abortion care is part of family medicine. It's part of primary care. We're trained to do that. And so ideally, it should be just like any other part of primary care.
But is there anything being done to bring us closer to that ideal? Is there anything at the executive level or in legislation to try and expand the access, especially for rural communities?
Yeah. I can tell you in President Biden's executive order, he's setting up a reproductive rights task force, which includes the Department of Health and Human Services and the medical community. And so this is being looked at from a nationwide perspective.
Anything else?
Do any of you have any numbers on how many people have come to North Carolina in this influx you mentioned?
The statistic I saw was that facilities in Charlotte were seeing 30% of their appointments being made from people out of state, and that number is even spiked from above that 30% number. But precisely, we don't have. I'm sure it's obtainable, and we can get that to you. Okay. Anything else? Well, we very much appreciate you all being here today. Very much. Thanks.